In the near future, Miami, Florida has been flooded due to global warming. The wealthy landowners control the dry land, while the town is poor and some people are homeless and live on boats, or in slum-like areas. People try to find ways to escape and remember happier times in this tough world. Nicholas Bannister is a former military veteran who has a business. He has a special machine called a reminiscence machine that can allow people to relive old memories. This machine was used in the past for police investigations. Nick talks throughout the story, like in old-fashioned detective movies, and he describes his thoughts and the world during the events that happen. Nick and his partner, Emily Sanders, who is also a former veteran, have customers who make appointments. Some of these customers include Nick's old friend Hank, who is paralyzed, and a regular customer named Elsa Kareen. Elsa always wants to experience the same memory of her and an old lover. The police officer Avery Castillo asks Nick to investigate a man named Walter Sylvan, who is a powerful landowner but is now dying. Nick is late for the meeting and the police decide not to use his services. However, as Nick is leaving, he overhears Walter asking his son Sebastian if he has found someone, but Sebastian says no. One day, before closing his shop, Nick meets a woman named May. She asks him to help her find her missing keys, and he agrees. While helping her, Nick becomes enchanted by May's singing, especially a song that his grandfather used to sing before he passed away. Later, they meet again at one of May's singing jobs, and they eventually fall in love with each other. May tells Nick a story about how her boat drifted away, and she ended up at a white sea house just off the shore. Months later, May is missing, and Nick is trying to remember where she might have gone. His friend, Watts, is worried about how obsessed Nick has become, but Nick doesn't listen and says that people can't just disappear. Nick is asked to investigate the memories of Falks, who used to work for a crime boss named St. Joe. While watching Falk's memories, Nick sees May with Joe and a corrupt cop. Nick convinces Falks to remember more times he saw May, and they find a memory where May steals a lot of a drug called Baca from Joe and attacks Falks when he catches her. This makes Nick question how well he knew May, so he goes alone to New Orleans to question St. Joe. When Nick arrives at St. Joe's headquarters, he pretends to be a drug addict to get in, but Joe figures out that Nick is lying. Nick stops pretending and asks Joe about May, but Joe says he hasn't seen her in a long time. Joe then tries to kill Nick by drowning him in an eel tank. Luckily, Watts arrives just in time to rescue Nick, and a gunfight breaks out. In the end, Joe is mortally wounded, Nick is saved from the tank, and all of Joe's men are dead. After that, Watts takes Nick home. Nick keeps searching through his memories of May and realizes that she stole recordings of other people's memories from his vault, including Elsa's. Nick tries to find Elsa, but a girl who knew her tells him she has already been killed, and her son Freddie has been kidnapped and possibly killed by May. Cyrus stops Nick and warns him to stop searching for May. He calls someone to tell them that Nick won't be bothering them anymore. He also finds out that May was working with the crooked cop, who is actually a criminal named Cyrus Booth. Watts tells Nick that Walter Sylvan has died, and people are angry that his land monopoly is still in place. As Nick watches Walter's family leave, consisting of Walter's son Sebastian and his wife Swati, he suddenly has an idea. Upon returning to the office, he uses his memory of Elsa's earlier memory as a replacement for what May stole. He compares it to a memory that Swati, Sebastian's mother, had watched years ago when she was one of Nick's clients. Nick discovers that Walter had an affair with Elsa years ago and had a son with her. Nick wants to help Elsa and her son, who are in danger. Watts thinks they should go to the police, but Nick doesn't trust them. They argue, and Nick accuses Watts of using work as an excuse to avoid her old life. Nick fires her and arranges for her to work with someone else, and she leaves angrily. Nick visits Swati at the Sylvan Manor and asks her about Walter's affair during a playback of a memory he had on file. She reveals that Elsa was not the only woman he had affairs with. The questioning is interrupted by Sebastian, who orders Nick to be killed. However, one of the bodyguards, a former military vet, spares Nick's life. Not giving up, Nick follows Cyrus to an empty factory where homeless people live and questions him about May. Cyrus teases Nick, causing him to attack. Cyrus escapes when Nick hesitates, but Nick follows him. After a fight, Nick uses a drug to knock Cyrus out. Nick takes Cyrus to his office and uses a machine to question him. Cyrus reveals the truth. He forced May to work for him by threatening to expose her secrets. May used Nick's feelings for her to gain access to his vault and steal Elsa's memory recordings. Cyrus and May found Elsa and Freddy, and Cyrus killed Elsa. May didn't kidnap Freddy but saved him and kept him safe. Cyrus drugged May with a substance called Baka to make her reveal where Freddy was. However, instead of telling Cyrus, May left a message for Nick in a memory. In the message, she apologizes for lying to him and confesses that she loved him but should have been honest. May then kills herself by jumping off a building. Nick is very upset about this. Instead of killing Cyrus, Nick decides to use the reminiscence machine to traumatize him by showing him a memory of Nick's men from St. Joe's burning and disfiguring him. Nick increases the machine's voltage to give Cyrus an electric shock, causing him to become lobotomized. In the end, there's one last surprise. Nick goes back to the Sylvan mansion and finds out the real culprit behind everything, Sebastian. He ordered Cyrus to kill Elsa and Freddy because he was scared that Freddy would take away his inheritance. Cyrus actually spoke to Sebastian on the phone, not May. Nick saved Freddy and gave the police a tip to rescue him. Sebastian threatens to kill Nick but ends up killing himself. As Nick leaves, Sebastian's mom consoles him. Nick goes to visit Watts at her new job, and the two make up. Nick tells Watts that he intentionally damaged Cyrus' brain, which is a serious crime. Even so, Nick tells Watts to inform Avery and the police everything that happened. Nick then explains the entire story to Watts, but it happens off-screen. At a later time, Nick is seen walking back to his office while Miami is in chaos with riots happening everywhere. He then returns to his office and uses the reminiscence machine to relive his memories with May. In the final scene, Nick is old and still using the machine. Watts is with him and taking care of him, and they talk about how they made their own choices in life. Watts' granddaughter asks why she's taking care of Nick, and they leave. Nick is shown remembering a happy moment with May as he tells her a story about Orpheus and Eurydice. The scene cuts back and forth between this memory and Nick's present state, and he looks content and happy.